You know, it's okay for this to be a very passionate and divisive topic in the Jewish community. It's okay for there to be a lot of passion about Israel, because this is, and I don't like the PTSD term, but this is an existential debate. And for many of my friends in J Street, I know it's an existential question about whether Israel is going to continue to exist as a Jewish and democratic state. And for many of my friends who are in other parts of the Jewish community, it is an existential question about whether Israel is going to continue to exist in an unsecure part of the world, surrounded by people who have vowed to destroy the Jewish state and equate Jewish Zionists all together. So it's existential, and that's where this passion comes from. And when we're talking about our existence, or the existence of a Jewish state, whether you are a J Streeter who believes that the existence question is on the table because of democracy and peace, or whether you are of another affiliation that believes the existence question is on the table because of not taking security seriously, it is the kind of thing that invites some level of saying, you know what, there are boundaries. And while it's not necessarily fair to use the Ku Klux Klan as the paradigm, and I've definitely heard it used in Jewish audiences before, it is a paradigm about what is beyond. What is about destroying that state? What is about destroying that thing that we love and believe in and is at the heart of the Jewish sense of self about a Jewish state? So it's okay. I will defend. It's okay to have boundaries. The red lines word has now gotten caught up in this whole other political pejorative about Iran and Syria, so maybe it's the wrong word to be using. The boundaries are fine, and we have the right to boundaries. I do want to make a distinction which something has come up, and Peter, I agree with you 100% that many American Jewish communities would benefit from talking far more to Palestinians. And I will tell you that in our community, talking to Palestinians is a norm of our behavior, both in our community and when we take people to Israel. Not just Palestinians who are Zionists. There aren't many of them, although there are Israeli Arab citizens who would use that term and self-describe themselves. But also to Palestinians who are leaders on the West Bank. We don't go to Gaza for obvious reasons, because you can't. But to Palestinians on the West Bank, it is a norm in our community, and it should be the norm in all communities, to talk to more Palestinian voices. Not because we expect them to be Zionists, although it would be nice to hear them supporting the idea of a Jewish state as vociferously as some of us support the idea of a Palestinian state. And not because it challenges our boundaries. Our boundaries are about who we are, who speaks for us, who speaks as a legitimate voice of a Jewish American community. But it's also about who we speak to. And the Palestinians are not who we're speaking for us, but it's who we're speaking to. And you're right, we need to speak to people, other people. And frankly, who speaks with us is something that our boundaries are not as tight on. We're not as specific about it, in the sense that some of the organizations of the Jewish communal table will not speak with, will not entertain voices who support BDS at their conferences and gatherings, while others will. There's not a hard set boundary about who we talk to beyond our community. What we do have are sensitive ideas of boundaries about who is in our community. And I think that's something that's okay. I just want to flag something that Peter raised, not quite this boundary topic, but I want to point it out as one of those things that frankly drives lots of us crazy. Peter, you said that Israel's legitimacy rests on its democratic credentials. Now, I would have no problem saying that we absolutely support a democratic state of Israel, and that we believe that part of achieving a completely democratic state of Israel is having two states. I would agree with that statement. I would also go so far as to say, I would personally have a hard time being passionate about Israel if Israel wasn't at least striving towards a true and full democracy. But to say that the legitimacy of a state is premised on its democratic credentials is to set up a standard for Israel that we do not set up for over 100 countries around the world. And it is unfair, and we have a responsibility as Jews to be fair in our criticism. It is unfair to hold Israel to a higher standard of legitimacy than we hold China to, than we hold Saudi Arabia to, and that we hold all these other countries that the United States have good diplomatic and trade relationships with. And that's one I just want to put out to you. That drives us crazy when it comes up.